or up to €4,000 scrappage allowance. Available now at Gowan Motors, Navan Road. Terms and conditions apply.
We live by a code, and the code is this. Follow the fox. Let curiosity reign. Honor your instincts. Maximize time with mates. Fox it. Orchard Thief Cider. Always drink responsibly. Visit drinkaware.ie.
In a world where they said it couldn't be done, the impossible has been achieved. They've taken the perfect chicken breast sandwich and made it even perfecter. More perfect. Really, really better. How did they do this?
Could I have bacon and cheese on that, please?
That's right. A little extra sizzle is now in store. Supermac's new chicken breast sandwich. The best just got better with bacon and cheddar.
Are you paying a fortune to light your commercial premises? You could be saving up to 70% on your bills by switching to energy-efficient LEDs. ECI Lighting is Ireland's oldest lighting company and can invest all of the capital required to upgrade your building to LED technology. You'll make immediate utility savings, and we take care of everything, even recycling your old light fittings. Our flexible lighting as a service agreement includes a 5-year on-site warranty. Call us in Dublin, Cork or Belfast, or visit ecilighting.ie to find out more.
At SuperValue, we love meat, and we have great offers this week. Like SuperValue fresh Irish pork loin roast from our butcher counter, half price. And great value in our weekly SuperValue 7 offers. Like SuperValue Signature Tastes Hereford Steak Mince 700 gram, only €4. Because if you want the best quality meat in Ireland, it's got to be SuperValue.
The Saturday Panel on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Avantcard, powered by MasterCard.
We're on. All right, you're very welcome back to Off the Ball. It's time for our Saturday panel. We have a packed studio. We're going to squeeze in tight. There'll be no pushing and shoving, I hope, at any stage. We've got 4 inter-county managers, well, 3 inter-county managers and 1 now former inter-county manager. Liam Kearns, the former Tipperary manager, is with us, as is John Evans, the Wicklow manager, Wayne Kierans, the Louth manager, and Turlough O'Brien, the Carlow manager. Thanks a lot for coming in.
No problem. Welcome, Nathan.
Do you like the term former inter-county manager, Liam?
Not particularly. I've been called worse, though. It's fine.
So let's chat about your seasons then, Liam. We might start with Tipperary, because obviously it's come to an end and your role and your time there has come to an end. You had the quotes afterwards, I think, that it had become a little bit stale. And a lot of managers, I think actually Malachy O'Rourke said something similar last week with his time up in Monaghan, that had become a bit stale, that maybe it was time for a fresh voice. Do you get a sense of that during the year? You know, at those early training sessions, do you find maybe the points you're putting across aren't going through as easily?
Yeah, it's not so much that, I suppose. In your 4th year, it's a case of, the trajectory has to be upwards. And if it's not, then, you're going to have to look at things then. And for us, the trajectory wasn't upwards this year. So at that stage then, it's a case of, do you stay around to do a 5th year to try and get things back on track, or do you take the view that a fresh voice would change things? And so it's something you've got to size up, I suppose, really.
Yeah, I'd imagine you're incredibly proud though of how we had an All-Ireland semi-final.
Yeah, we had 3 great years. Getting a Division 3 team to an All-Ireland semi-final within a kick of a ball of an All-Ireland final, that won't be done too often, I don't think, without especially it won't be done if they change it into a two-tier championship.
We'll get on to that, no doubt.
But very proud of that. And they were in a kick of a ball of Division 1 football last year as well. I thought that we competed at the top level for 3 years, and this year then we had a load of injuries, a lot of problems, and it just didn't go the way we wanted it to go. We were on the back foot from the very start of the year, and it didn't work out the way we wanted to. But as I said, it's something you have to decide in the 4th year, whether you feel you should stay around to get it back on track, or whether you should leave a fresh voice in there. And I just think that those boys still have plenty to offer, and I think a fresh voice might be good at this stage.
Yeah, and I just to come in there with Liam is that I encourage Liam. I chased him down to see would he keep an interest in Tipperary, because I had such an affinity with them, and you keep saying that people keep accepting that Tipperary are where they are, but Liam took them and brought them to a much higher level, and he got huge professionalism into them, and they were a good bunch of guys that had come through, fair enough, but he got a lot out of them, and I think that to get into an All-Ireland semi-final was tremendous. I mean, you must still think that it was Tipperary, that they had spent 37 years in Division 4, and here they were now punching well above their weight. So full credit to him for taking on the role number one, and for pushing them to such a high standard.
You obviously had your time at Tipperary as well, and it's been a success story over the last decade, from minor through to under 21, through to getting that All-Ireland semi-final, and sort of unprecedented. Certainly in recent times, there is, I know, a tradition when you go way back of football success. Like, what bred it? What was it in Tipperary football that saw it emerge as a bit of a power over the last decade? Like, you were there pretty much right at the start.
Yeah, right at the start, I suppose. The first thing I would say is that we started working at the under 14s, 15s, 16s, and once we started working with them, and they had no fear, and we went into the schools and promoted the schools, and we won started coaching the high school. They won an All-Ireland Colleges B final, and this sort of thing. We got 4 or 5 guys out of that went on to the minor team. Then we started playing Cork and Kerry and beating them at under 14, under 15. And
what sort of work? So every county will say we're doing work at under 14, under 15. What were you doing that was different to what had gone before?
Well, what was totally different was that we created centres of groups of excellence from within, without any nepotism. It wasn't the secretary's son that went in, it wasn't the chairman's son. When we emphasise this, it wasn't a diehard from somewhere that his son went in, because the first thing you have to recognise when you bring in groups into a group of excellence is that they are the best in the county. And suddenly we realised, jeepers, these lads are making huge progress, because they knew they were the best in the county. And I'm sure you've seen it yourselves, that once you start to win at under 14, under 16, and at one stage we were Munster champions in under 14, under 15, under 16. And a young fella, young Reardon, that went off to Australia, he was inside in the Munster Munster final against Cork. And I was just after finishing the talk with him at half time, and he stood up and he says, I've never been beaten by Cork or Kerry at under, he's only 15 years of age, this guy. And he says, and we're not going to start now. It was amazing. They just had that victory attitude in them, And I suppose I'd have to say, and Liam would buy into this, I'm sure, is that Tipperary are very like Kerry. There's a small little bit of arrogance there. There's a bit of we expect to win, and no matter what they go at. So, but working on...
Does that come from the hurling side of it?
The hurling side, of course. But look, we started there and it grew, and then we won the All-Ireland minor final, and against Dublin, against the Costellos, the Mannions, the McCaffreys, the Smalls.
Yeah, I think 11 of that Dublin team have gone on to win All-Irelands.
So, I suppose when Liam did go in, just to tie it up, is that these guys were there and ready for the off, ready to be properly handled, and in fairness, that's where it came from, no doubt about it.
And was there much opposition along the way? Obviously, Tipperary traditionally would have been seen as a hurling county. When suddenly you're trying to look at the base of 14, 15-year-olds, and I know it's a constant tug-of-war between them, but obviously suddenly you're looking to take funding from hurling, push it towards football.
No, I don't think so. I don't think that was the situation at all, because John Costigan was the chairman there when we went in, and then a certain Barry O'Brien. He was a businessman. He was very level-headed. He was very, very progressive. He came in and...
He's the football board chairman now.
Football board chairman. And we all met in the Anner Hotel. It's hard to believe this. And we got the best brains around to sit down for 8 hours and say, hey, how do we go forward now? We now know we have a commodity. We now know we have something. How do we go forward? And by 4 or 5 o'clock that evening, we had a template put together. And I searched Ireland. And this is a fact. I searched Ireland to see was there another template around, and there wasn't.
Right.
Barry O'Brien had put the finger on it, and he says, this is the way we go.
And when you look around now towards other counties, have they implemented that sort of template? Have they come to Tipperary and said, how have you done this?
Yes, absolutely. And Jerome Conway, who was chairman below, and Kerry, I says, Jerome, you have a void between under 16 and minor, fill it. And I said the same to Pat O'Shea, and they went off and filled it. And look what when they filled it with real good stuff, So, yeah, it was I suppose there was pioneering it in so far that Barry O'Brien He was a very shrewd man, and you must remember that he had Sheedy as the manager as well, and they won, was it 1 or 2 All-Irelands under him, so he and you know, with Tim Floyd, who Liam would have worked under, I mean, he's a full-time secretary and massive head in him.
Was it Colin Reardon you said was the player who stood up?
That's right.
Who obviously ended up being a huge loss. But
I never worked with a Colin now.
When you went in then, I guess, whereas from the outside people would look at Tipperary and what they could possibly achieve, did you go into a dressing room of achievers, of players who actually expected, and when they were getting to an All-Ireland semi-final, it wasn't that?
Well, when I went in there, I thought all of that was there, and I knew the work that John had done, and I had spoken to John, and John told me, like, you know, that there was players there. But actually, when I went in to find that I'd lost a load of them before I even started. O'Riordan went to Australia, Stephen O'Brien went to the Hurlers. There was a load of players, quality players gone.
Seamus Kennedy who lost.
Yeah, Seamus Kennedy, another man that lost. But then we got as far as the end of the league, and another 4 or 5 of them went off to Australia and America. And you know, at that stage, then you know, we were under pressure really, and we hadn't got any depth in our panel. But like, we only played, it's well documented now at this stage, we only played 17 players, and we went all the way to an All-Ireland semi-final. We got over Cork, got to a Munster final, and we went on from there. But your problem then is that your reward for that was to lose Peter Atchison, who was one of our top players and leaders, to Dubai, and we also lost Kieran MacDonald, who was one of the best defenders I ever worked with, to injury. And you know, you talk about Reardon and those 3 or 4. You're not talking about normal players there. You're talking about once in a lifetime players for the likes of Tipperary. And to lose all of those players, you don't replace them. And you know, you've mentioned Stephen O'Brien disappeared. Seamus Kennedy, another man who would be a very good footballer, was playing hurling as well. So like, you know, that's the reality of it. And it's now a question of they're not doing as well at underage. And now it's a question of, I suppose I was with Limerick 15 years before. We had something similar where we took on the top teams, played Kerry in an All-Ireland.
Yeah, and somebody like John Galvin who can become the focal point of the team.
Yeah, and we played Kerry in a Division 1 league semi-final. They beat us by a point. They won it. We played them in a Munster final a couple of months later. We drew, went down and played them again, and they beat us after a big struggle in Killarney. They won the All-Ireland that year. But the point though is the underage structures then dried up in Limerick, and you know, Limerick ended up going back to Division 4 now. They had ironically they had a great win against us this year. But the point I'm making is trying to sustain that kind of improvement is the challenge for the Tipperaries and the Limericks, and that's the issue. You know, is it a cyclical thing? Is it that a number of good players, take Carlow here, Turlough I'm sure can talk about Carlow, but like, you know,
you end up with a bit of a golden generation, and thankfully you put the processes in place to take advantage of that.
Yes.
I suppose that to finish up on the Tipperary thing, just to say one last thing, and we were ridiculed and laughed at and everything. Our mantra at the time was to win an All-Ireland by 2020. When we came out of the Anor Hotel, when we had put all the best heads together for the improvement of Gaelic football, that was our goal. And this is where, you know, how you progress. We were absolutely laughed at. But I'll tell you, it can be done. And I suppose Turlough, this is into Turlough's point on the tier thing, that if you take away that dream, if you take away that passion for achievement of raising your county to a hugely high position, you take away an awful lot.
We'll get into that, I think, in depth, because there's obviously so much conversation around it this week and on Dublin's dominance as well. But Turlough, your season after last year, tasting a bit of glory and everybody raving about Carlow and sort of expecting them maybe to kick on Tipperary like to another level, it really didn't happen this season.
No, it didn't happen, but you know, you take the results at face value, you'd say it was a bad year for Carlow, but the reality was actually we were very, very unlucky this year. We started the year with an injury crisis and it just continued on from there. I don't think we got one good break all year. The only breaks we got were bad breaks.
Tell me about it.
It's amazing, like, the way things have gone. The previous year momentum is going one direction, and the team is progressing, and then just seem to get hit with hammer blows after hammer blows. And you know, we started the league quite well actually, beat Sligo at home, and then we had Westmeath up in Mullingar. We drew with them, and controversially we should have won the game. That was a huge actually result for you guys, because you played Westmeath in the last game, that deferred game, and you drew with them. But if we had got that last minute free, and that Sean Murphy it was an unbelievable decision. He was pulled down from behind in a black card offence. no free in, and we would have won the game. You would have been promoted.
Yeah.
And we'd have been still in Division 3. That's how tight it is, you know.
Yeah.
And then obviously we had a few more, narrow defeats. The down game in particular was a big turning point. You know, the second last game of the league, we needed to draw, and we were safe. And obviously, you know, it's a matter of history now, like, but.
Yeah, you end up with both yourself and Stephen Poacher suspended for the summer. Brendan Murphy's ruled out as well. Did you struggle then when the bad luck or the bad decisions or whatever it was, did you struggle to take them during the league? Personally, was it a strain?
The day in Mullingar, you know, we came off the pitch and we said, look, I just hope this doesn't come back to haunt us. And it certainly wasn't expected to happen again. And then obviously it did happen again, and you know, there were two hammer blows really, like they were really, really hammer blows for us because we had so many injuries. We just weren't getting a break, and I suppose your heads drop and confidence begins to drain away a little bit, you know. But we were still very, very competitive. Like we actually finished third last in the league. We didn't finish second last, but we lost out in the head-to-head with Offaly, who got an injury time point above in Sligo to stay up. Everybody was listening on the radio on the sideline, and we were home and dry on Moore Park against Laois, and this last minute score from Offaly then saves them and relegates us.
I get the sense the mathematics of how Division 3 played out have kept you up late at night.
Yeah, well, it's the interesting thing about it, I find, is that because there's only 7 games in the league, that you know, your position can be determined by, you know, a poor call by a referee, and maybe there's a case made for some kind of expansion of the league, because there are only 7 games and these decisions become huge then over the course of a league campaign. Whereas if you had, say, a home and away league, for instance, those decisions would kind of iron out maybe over 14 games, and I wouldn't be as critical. But when you get to the stage at the end of the league and you're looking back on it and you can point at this decision or that decision, and you're kind of grasping at straws to a certain extent, but nonetheless, they are factors, and there is a case to be made for maybe looking at the league and building on what's there already, because it's a great competition.
How do you reflect now on your clash with the referee after the down game that ultimately ended with the 20-week suspension and not being able to be on the sideline for the championship?
Well, you know, it's easy, you know, when you're not involved to say, oh, that should never happen, like, but when you're there in the day and emotions are high, these things do happen, unfortunately, you know, and I regret it now, of course. You know, it shouldn't have happened, it did happen. Having said that, I think we were treated very, very unfairly. I think the disciplinary system is not fit for purpose, and I think we produced enough evidence to overturn some of those decisions, but it didn't happen, and I think we need to look at our whole system of dealing with discipline, because it's not fit for purpose.
Well, I know Stephen Poacher was on OTBM, I think it was last week, talking about this, and obviously it's maybe comparing apples and oranges when you look at the Tiernan McCann incident, which was a pretty disgraceful thing to happen on the field of play, and he gets a 2-week suspension, whereas you end up with 20-week suspensions for an issue with the referee. I guess the other side of that is that players, 99% of them, aren't going to go onto the pitch and make contact with another player's face like Tiernan McCann did, whereas actually issues with referees is a bit of a scourge on the GAA. It seems to be every single match that managers, supporters, backroom staff are in the face of the referee from every level, and that actually as inter-county managers you need to be held to a pretty high standard.
I can't disagree with what you're saying there, to be honest with you, but having said that, you know, there's a lot of issues there. You know, take for instance, you know, the definition to tackle. I mean, there's so many variables. One referee is blowing to tackle, it's a swarm tackle, the other fellow is blowing for overcarrying, and even in the same game referees are doing that, you know. So
would the 4V agree on the definition of a tackle?
It's not there. There's no definition of a tackle. Kieran McGeeney's been pretty outspoken about that. When all the hullabaloo about the rules came to the beginning of this season or last season, you know, they were busy counting the stats of how many hand passes went up in the game when there's still no definition of a tackle. And Turlough's right, because these calls are so marginal in a campaign. I think the steering group need to look at that big time. It's one of the things I would certainly advocate to get right. Define the tackle, and then the discretionary element of the referees will sort of go out, and you're in a black and white situation where we know exactly where we stand, and more importantly the players know where to stand and what they can do and what they can't do.
Do you think the referees are happy with the current situation?
I don't think so, and I suppose another weakness in the system from my perspective would be that the only people in the GA that have no voice are managers.
Well, you have a voice today. You have a voice after every match.
It's not really. Not within the association. We have the GPA, we have the CPA, we have the Referees Association. There's no forum for managers to come together and talk about, you say, rules or...
The problem there, though, is the managers are transient by nature and that they're not there.
But nonetheless, they're usually there for 3 or 4 years, and there should be some effort made to involve them in, looking at, the fixtures programme, looking at the rules. Instead, there's no consultation at all, and these people are involved, really at the coalface, in the training.
You sit down with referees at the start of the year and sort of be told what the plan is? Because I've heard of it happening in hurling, which is one of the reasons why maybe it doesn't work at times, that actually the referees would sit down, explain decisions, and then the managers would have totally different points of view on what should have been a free and what wasn't. That it is so subjective at times, it feels.
Yeah, I would certainly do that. I would certainly do it as often as I could, is to have a referee explain to the team and to ourselves. But I would certainly have a one-on-one. And I'd have to say about referees is that you'd have to have sympathy for them in a certain way, is that because one referee is deciding one and the other's deciding something else is a free. But if you talk to them privately, they would say it's horrendous to try and watch every rule, eyes in the back of your head. They're not being helped at all. I remember with Goff, and he refereed a game there, and I just said to him at half time, I says, your umpires and your linesmen are not helping you, and the second half everything was much sharper, much clearer, and this was a good referee who took on board what was happening around him rather than what he was looking at on the ball. And it's impossible for them to see everything. So I think that the two linesmen have to come into it a lot more.
From my experience too, that the least problems occur when referees talk to managers and coaches, linesmen and fourth officials, because we do get very hot in the side. There's no question of it. We all lose the cool and so on. A linesman running past you and telling you to calm down, or cop onto yourself for say it was a foul, whatever. And there's just a bit of talk, and it diffuses the whole situation. But when you're ignored and you're spoken down to and you're treated poorly, there is a reaction, and people lose their head, and it's frustrating for both the referee and the management in those situations. I think if a referee is more relaxed and can talk to players and talk to managers, he's a far better relationship, and it's far easier to accept decisions when he has to make the hard calls.
Now that the season is done and dusted for Carlow and the disappointments, well, I'm sure it's probably there and probably as painful as it was a couple of weeks ago. Are you looking forward to getting back in the winter and trying to rejuvenate them again? Or with Division 4 football to come, does it feel like it's going to be a pretty tough task?
Well, we didn't expect to be relegated, quite honest with you. Our ambition really was to go to Division 3. We thought we could. And I think we still could have, looking back in the season. We weren't too far off despite the results. So it is a bit of a letdown that we're going back to Division 4, especially in the circumstances. But having said that, I think we can go back with confidence. We have proved to ourselves that we can compete in Division 3. We've had some really, really great years. That's not going to change overnight. The team, I suppose, is at a stage where we have a lot of players who are very experienced, coming towards the latter end of their careers. And I suppose one of our concerns would be that if the management all finished, that maybe some of the players might finish up as well, and transition wouldn't be good for Carlow. So I'd be hoping maybe that we might be able to get around the table and discuss it and agree to maybe get back together next year and go on again.
So you're intending to stay on anyways?
I would hope so, but it's not confirmed yet.
Yeah. Wayne, from Louth's point of view, obviously missing out on promotion on the last day, but all in all, probably a successful league campaign in that you won quite a few games, you win a championship game, and then you suffer the might of the dubs, and that seems to take all the momentum out of everything, and then you go out in the first round of the qualifiers. How do you look back in the year for Louth?
Yeah, no, I suppose now that the dust has settled in the Antrim game, you would the sentiments would be, like you said, the league was pretty positive. 10 points, one shot away from going up to Division 2. So we were obviously disappointed not to make it, but we were quite happy with the league campaign overall. We got a good win against Wexford in the opening Leinster Championship game, and then of course you're in a difficult situation now where you have to play Dublin. And I think summing up the whole year, the mental hangover from that was probably you know, we didn't realise how big it was when we did come into the Antrim game. The mentality is basically what lost us the game against Antrim in the second half. It was by far our poorest period.
Had you prepared for that in any way? Because we were down in Cork last week, and I remember Daniel Goulding saying ahead of the Munster final that Cork almost need to look at their next 2 games as 2 games together, rather than putting everything mentally into the Munster final, that if they were, which they didn't obviously, but if they did take a big beating, that's not the end of their season, that they need to somehow keep themselves strong. Were you able to prepare for that Dublin game, thinking, listen, in all likelihood we're not going to win this, but the first round of the qualifiers is what's going to decide our summer?
We didn't really approach it that way. We approached it the way in the sense, look, let's see how good a performance we can deliver against Dublin. Now, obviously, it's very hard to deliver a good performance against Dublin because they're so good, but we were still disappointed with the manner of our play, and we felt we could have done a lot better. So we were really only focused on that, really. And then, you know, because you don't know the draw, you don't know who you're going to get, we realised it would have been difficult to progress in the Leinster Championship, of course, but you don't know what you're going to get in the qualifiers till the draw, so there was no real point in focusing on it. But I would suggest again that the hangover from the Dublin game was probably we underappreciated it really, and we paid for it in the second half against Antrim, who were a better team on the day without a doubt. But like I said, when the dust settles, you still have to be positive, you know, over the league campaign. As Turlough said, the marginal calls and the closest of that Division 3 is really there for all to see. You could be one result one weekend, you could be looking down, one result, you know, we could have got up. So you know, we'd be very positive about the Division 3 campaign. We'd be positive about, obviously, our first game in the Leinster Championship, but Division 3 is going to be even more competitive next year. That's the thing to look forward to.
John, just on Wicklow's season then, and obviously you ran to Kildare very close in the first round of the Championship. To go out to Leitrim, to go out to Division 4 opposition, does that make it more difficult to take?
No, I suppose it doesn't. The first thing I would say is that, look, we were joined third in Division 4 in a group of 4, and we right throughout our results, bar one, we were extremely competitive in all the games and could have gone either way in a lot of them. And against Leitrim, actually, in the league, we were by the 69th or 70th minute, we had gone a point up, and against the run of play there was a fortuitous goal that changed the run of it, but it killed our momentum. But we'd improved a lot right throughout the league, and when it came to the Kildare game, we were in a very good place, in fact, you know, and we didn't realise that. You know, I suppose until about 18 or 20 minutes to go, when Dean Healy had a shot that just went barely wide, that these guys are a small bit open today. And from there to the end of the game, there was only 1 team in it, and unfortunately our free taking didn't happen on the day. And you know, but when we came up against Leitrim again at home, and home is the away fixture is huge in the qualifiers, number one. But you'd certainly would have to say that Leitrim had improved immensely from the first time we'd met them, and you know, we had 3 goal chances, we didn't take it, and you must take your chances on the day. So I suppose listening to the players and talking with them afterwards, they know that a huge consistency is after coming into the team. However, what I wouldn't give for somebody to like young Fox or Cox to fall into Wicklow somewhere and
missed opportunity for you there.
Yeah,
know the bloodlines of every single Kerry man. Was there not a few of them with a Wicklow connection?
Yeah, well, look, you take it. But no, look, there's some good young lads coming up for Wicklow. Really good young players. So look, and they're forwards. So yeah, the year went. Could have gone better, obviously. You're never very happy, but certainly Wicklow are getting very, very competitive.
It's a bit of a trek, obviously, up from Kerry. Are you going to go back for one more year?
Massive. I'm still trying to take stock and sit back and look at it. And you know, you have to. I suppose the only way of counteracting the drive, and I'd have to say this quite openly, is that I do work out. I do lots of hills, lots of walking, lots of jogging, lots of cycling to keep the body right, because it's tough going. It is really tough going. But the lads are good, they're responding well. I must say the county board give us every assistance that they can, possibly, and they're certainly not blocking anything. What I'd love to see is a few more guys coming in the door, and we'll touch on this later, I think, with the qualifier, or sorry, with the two-tier maybe.
Mrs. Evans, keen for you to do another year?
Well, I'm 39 years married to Bridie.
You wouldn't go and manage London, would you?
And if I take up anything, it will be marriage counsellor.
All right, that is John Evans, the Wicklow manager. He's in studio with us here. We've got Turlough O'Brien, Liam Kearns and Wayne Kierans as well. Get your text into 53106. We're live on all our social channels. We are going to talk about championship structure because the four lads all managing teams that may be under a bit of threat if we're talking about championship structure over the next couple of years in the top tier and a second tier. Just to let you know though, if you're heading to the Leinster final this week, keep an eye out for the return of the championship haircut with thanks to Electric Ireland. The pre-game ritual will be on the Cusick stand side of Crow Park with haircutting and styling services available free of charge between 10:45 and 1:45 tomorrow. Guys have a choice of the 4 styles on screen, from the minor fade to the crossbar shave. You can see them up on screen there. John, we'll leave you out of this one. We'll leave you out of this one for now. I don't know. I'd say you've all seen a few of them in the squads this season.
No doubt about it.
They all like the little football flick, I think, the young lads these days. So if you're going to the match tomorrow, head along to that. And to celebrate that, Electric Ireland have given us 2 tickets to the Leinster hurling final tomorrow. Simply answer the following question. Kilkenny have won a record 21 Electric Ireland All-Ireland Minor Hurling Championships, but when did they last become All-Ireland Minor Champions? Text your name and answer to 53106 to be with a chance of winning. You must be able to collect your tickets from here in the office in Dublin before the game tomorrow. The Electric Ireland GEA Leinster Minor Hurling Championship final featuring Kilkenny and Wexford, just like in the Senior Decider. Well, that's going to be streamed through Sport TG Cahir's website and on YouTube. Quick break. I'm back with more from our panel.
The Saturday panel on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Avantcard, powered by MasterCard.
Avantcard Reward Plus Credit Card, Ireland's only credit card that gives you interest refunds on purchases. Info correct June 2019. Source ccpc.ie. Avantcard DAC is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Is that the sun I see staring down at me? Finally come to play and I say, hey, here come the bunnies.
It's time to wheel out the barbecue. Time for family, for friends, for loved ones to gather round. Time to turn up the heat because
here come the bunnies.
Bundy's, the bun burgers love.
Introducing Toyota's new generation cars, including the all-new Corolla family and the iconic Camry, as well as Ireland's best-selling hybrid, the Toyota CHR. Powered by self-charging hybrid engines that are in electric mode over 50% of the time, with great offers for 192, including trade-in boosters of up to €3,000. There's never been a better time to make the switch. Demand is high, so don't miss out. Toyota. Built for a better world. Terms and conditions apply.
Bruce Betting, one of Ireland's leading bookmakers. With best odds guaranteed on UK and Irish horse racing, Bruce Betting has you covered. And with the Bruce Betting app, we're always giving you more. T's and C's apply. Bruce Betting. In-store, online and now on your phone. Over 18s. Please gamble responsibly. See dunlewy.net.
There are a lot of solicitors out there offering legal services, and it's hard to know who to choose. The National Solicitors Alliance has been established to make it easy to find a trusted legal service.
The Alliance includes 50 approved firms across the country, working locally and sharing expertise nationally. Find your nearest National Solicitors Alliance member at nsalliance.ie.
This Irish success story is brought to you by Guaranteed Irish.
Did you know that Kingspan have a 50-year history of innovation and product development deep-rooted in Ireland's rural communities? Today, their world-class facility in County Monaghan produces the highest-performing insulation manufactured in Ireland. Guaranteed Irish helps you support companies that are altogether better choices for our communities. So, look out for it. GuaranteedIrish.ie. Altogether better.
you're thinking of buying a residential rental property, ICS Mortgages can provide an excellent range of flexible buy-to-let mortgages, including interest-only terms of up to 15 years. We'll also help you to refinance your existing portfolio and grow your property investments. Call 1890 427 427, visit icsmortgages.ie or contact your local mortgage broker. ICS Mortgages, the property investor's choice. Lending criteria, terms and conditions apply and are subject to change. The entire amount that you have borrowed will still be outstanding at the end of the interest-only period. Dilosk DAC, trading as Dilosk and ICS Mortgages, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
A blush velvet armchair to sink and unwind in. A teal fabric sofa to curl up and relax on. There are so many ways to create a stylish oasis in the Easy Living Interiors summer sale. A designer dining set for sharing with friends and family. A luxurious bedroom to escape and dream in. Find your oasis of comfort and style at Easy Living Interiors. Cork, Waterford, Navan, Naas, Sandyford and Drogheda. Summer sale now on.
It's time to make the move to a whole new world of Wi-Fi. Switch to Virgin Media to experience Wi-Fi at its smartest and get superfast broadband with Mixed TV for €59 a month for 12 months and €89 a month thereafter. Smart Wi-Fi from Virgin Media. It takes care of your Wi-Fi so you don't have to.
Terms and conditions apply. See virginmedia.ie. 12-month contract. Offer ends 31st of July 2019.
The Cadbury Flake McFlurry is here at McDonald's. So break out your short shorts because rain or shine, summer has officially begun. Soft dairy ice cream swirled with Cadbury Flake chocolate pieces and delicious chocolatey or raspberry sauce. Available until the 6th of August.
Off the ball. This is News Talk.
All right, you're very welcome back to our Saturday panel. We have John Evans, Turlough O'Brien, Liam Kearns and Wayne Kierans in studio. We are going to talk, I think, about championship restructure and probably also partly Dublin's dominance. I think they're probably two separate things at the moment in terms of this conversation. I might play it first just to start the conversation. Kieran Donaghy, like a lot of people, has been thinking long and hard about a two-tier system and how it could work and how it could be promoted. He was on OTBAM a couple of weeks back chatting about this. Here's what he had to say.
We've no games to look forward to in the summer. Basically, we'd won last week, which was a good game above in Breffni Park. But yeah, you're looking at Munster and you're looking at Leinster, and it's
pointless.
It's pointless, yeah, and Ulster's up for debate every year, which is kind of good. Connacht Mayo won 6 in a row, and then Galway have come back with a kind of an answer, but it's normally those two. But yeah, it's when you look at how good the hurling championship is and how exciting it is and how much you want to watch all the games every week.
Yeah.
And then you're kind of sitting there as a football fan, kind of going, you know, it's not good. It's time to move on. It's time to move with the times.
Why can't we have a bit of that?
Yeah, why can't we have a bit of that? So
you've decided on a tiered championship.
Yeah.
Before we get to the championship, how do you decide on the tiers and what else happens?
I think the first year you decide on the tiers will probably obviously go in the national leagues from the year before. And I was talking to Owen yesterday, and we've done a bit of work. He done the bulk of the science behind it, and
I love living in this alternate reality that we actually have a good football championship. So yeah, the fixtures are actually exciting. Basically, it's based on next year's National League, if there were to be a National League. So you'd have the likes of Laois, for example, playing in, or Westmeath, for example, playing in the top tier because they got promoted from Division 3, for example. So that's what we've gone on.
Imagine the final year of the league, how competitive that league would be.
If you knew that was coming in?
Yeah. Oh. Like that Division 3 championship would be the greatest Division 3 league campaign in history, and you would immediately see the value of what the championship the next year was going to be like.
Yeah, so that's Kieran Donaghy talking about what he was proposing, which I think was February and March. You'd have provincial championships in a round-robin format where teams would play each other on a regular basis, and you'd still have the provincial finals. April, you'd have club-only month, as is. May, you'd probably hand over to hurling, and you'd have football training, and then you go into this tiered championship whereby it would be round robin again. You'd have home and away games, you'd have 2 groups of 16, and then you'd have the semi-finals and finals of both tiers through August and September. Turlough, I know you were writing about this week. You're not for 2 tiers.
No, I'm not. No, I'm completely against it. First off, I just think that the way we're approaching this is completely wrong. It's been spoken about in isolation. I think the GA are doing a big disservice here. The President has gone on his own agenda really to promote tier championship, and he's appointed the fixtures committee then to look at the overall fixture programme. And I don't think he can do them separately. I think we should be looking at the whole picture, because this is bigger than inter-county football as well. It impacts on club football as well. So I think the whole lot has to be looked at together. I mean, I think club football and club hurling is probably in crisis in a lot of counties because of the inter-county scene as it is. So if we're going to add in more fixtures into the inter-county programme, as we've done in the hurling format and the Super 8s, and now we're going to go with tier championship, where's it going to stop? Where's it going to stop? Where are we going to get time for clubs for a start? In terms then of...
Well, let's ignore the club side of it for the moment.
But we can't though. This is where our problems are arising, because we're saying the GA is about, the club is the most important unit, and yet we go off and make these decisions that impact on the clubs. So we don't have to join up thinking that we have to have about this. To go back to the tier championship, to me it's like putting up a barrier. You talk about the Brexit and the border. We're putting a border between Division 3 and 4 and everybody else. I don't think that's right. I think, some of the greatest days we've had have been in the qualifiers, then we've played some of the big teams. It's been fantastic for us. You siphon teams off into another competition. This is going to be a second tier competition. It's going to be impossible for the media to cover it, because it just can't cover all the fixtures that are going on. Reporters can only cover so many games. How are they going to cover it? Supporters aren't really going to be engage with this until you get to the final stage of it. So you're going to have a lot of fixtures that are going to be poorly attended. There's not going to be public interest, in my opinion. They're talking about the final, maybe in Croke Park as a curtain raiser, one of the bigger games, but that really is a sop to me, really. At the end of the day, if you look at the history of results, performances across the country, it's dominated by a small number of counties. To come to a tier championship, it will be dominated by the top teams at the top Division 3 probably. So the likelihood is that these teams that are in Division 4 in particular might never get to the final of it even. So they might never get to see this big day. But yet they're going to be playing in a second tier competition. It's going to be treated like a second tier competition, and I don't see any attraction in that for players, to be quite honest with you. I see a lot of players talking about it. They're looking forward maybe that they would play in Croke Park before a big crowd. It's not going to happen.
But what are the big days, particularly for, say, Leinster counties in Division 3 and Division 4? What are those big days now? You played Dublin this year. Is that something your players are always going to look back at? Or was it a day actually where the golfing class, for many, many reasons that's there, was just showing up? Are they looking back thinking we got to take on possibly the greatest team of all time as something that they look back on with pride?
No, probably not particularly, no. Because it was a chasing experience really from start to finish. The only good thing about it was the profile you get associated with playing them in the first place, and the fact that they probably are the greatest team of all time. And in terms of Louth, we don't get it. We wouldn't be one of the high-profile counties. But I still don't think. I think it's up to everybody involved in the association to help all the smaller counties bridge the gap. And I don't necessarily think a Tier 2 championship is going to help us bridge the gap. So you're sort of treating the symptoms rather than the disease, really. I think there's a gulf because of the many reasons. But what is what mechanism can we put in place to bridge the gap, bridge the gulf, and help weaker counties improve? Because that's what we want. I think if you take Dublin out of the equation and say a so-called Division 3 or a weaker county Division 3 or even 4, if they play anybody else, they'll definitely learn something, and in some cases will have a competitive enough game. Dublin's obviously a different scenario where it's very hard for any of the lower counties, even Division 2 teams. Have you seen Meath, how to compete? So I think it has to be carefully structured that we do get the opportunity to improve. We do get the opportunity to bridge a gap.
Would this not, a two-tier championship, not give counties like Louth or Wicklow an opportunity to do that, or even Carlow last year, where maybe you would have ended up with such momentum in a second tier decider at Croke Park, which maybe you would have gone on and won and earned promotion up to the top tier, and actually you would have been ready for that, and you get your day in the sun?
I don't see that, but the way I see this at the moment is Tier 1 is Dublin. End of story. Go back to the Super 8s last year. There were some mighty hammerings in the Super 8s. These are the top 8 teams in the country last year. Hammerings in it. 17 points, 15 points.
That's going back to what Wayne is saying there. Look, if you compare, Meath got a hammering. Laois got a hammering. Roscommon got hammering last year. So comparing with Dublin, look, forget about that, lads. That's not what it's about. It's about a tier championship. I think it's important to have it. But I would have a different view actually on what's required. Like, I mean, if it's not going to be backed up, and this is where I would agree with you, Turlough, if it's not going to be backed up with support, with venues, with right promotion, and I can see huge blocks on it. In fact, you look at today. Just look at today. Anybody spot what's on today?
McDonagh Cup, yeah.
McDonagh Cup. Right, that's one part. There's a second thing on today. You have Laois playing awfully. No mention. Not on. Sky is on here, and they're not even mentioned. They're not even getting one of them. And you look at Westmeath playing Clare. God almighty, those 4 teams are seen as the weaker teams, and here John Horton is going to come along and tell us he's going to look after us in a second tier. I want a second tier, but don't cod me and tell me that you're going to give us lip service. They're going to put us into bad pitches. I disagree with Turlough on another aspect. I think you will have support for a team that has momentum, that moves on. But the last part is the tricky one. This is where I've looked at it with Roscommon. They came out of Division 4 to 3-2. Looked at it from Tipperary from 4 to 3-2. My version is that you have to go with 12 Division 4 and the bottom 4 of Division 3. And this is the trick in it. The top 4 of Division 3 go with Division 2 and 1. And why? Division 3 is an absolute nightmare. It's dog eats dog. The teams are very good, but the top 4 should qualify to go into and make it a 20 team in division in one tier and a 12 tier in the other.
Does that not lower the second tier even more? That say next year, if this panned out in some way and it was 16 and 16, you'd have Cork down in the second tier?
Bite the dust and say, hey, if I'm in Division 4, I certainly won't play. I have a less chance of beating the top 4 teams in Division 3 because they're very close. In my experience is that the top 2, 3 or 4 teams in Division 3 are extremely close to Division 2 and 1.
The reality is, though, that the proposal on the table is the one that's there, and there's 2 options on it.
Sorry, yeah. So let's just everybody has their own idea on this, and everybody would like whether it's Champions League formats or anything else, or how you retain. So John Horan has indicated there's 2 options up for consideration. One of which, if approved by Special Congress later this year, will likely be trialled next year in 2020. So the first proposal would mean that all counties play in their provincial championships, and if a Division 3 or Division 4 side fails to make it to the provincial final, they'd go straight into the Tier 2 competition. The other proposal would mean all teams take part in the provincial championship. Only if a Division 3 or Division 4 side fail to make it to the provincial final, they would first go into the qualifiers. If they then lose in round 1 or 2 of the qualifiers, then they'd go into the secondary competition. So you would have several opportunities. You'd have more games for intercounty before you fall down to a second tier. Do either of them?
He's also talking there about, if I'm not mistaken, if Division 3 or 4 team get to a provincial final, that they would be replaced by the bottom team in Division
2.
But the bottom team in Division 2 could be in a provincial final as well. And so could the second from bottom could be in Division 2, could be in a provincial final. So where are you going then? So I think it's poorly thought out again.
So if you have a situation in Connacht where somehow Galway, Mayo and Roscommon are on one side of the draw, it somehow works it that one of them ends up in the second tier.
So that doesn't make sense.
Like there's clearly no ideal scenario. Just on what John talked about on today's fixture, how
that's what I'm really
Clare were
concerned.
probably insulted that it's seen as a top 4 and a bottom 4 today.
And Colin Collins has a right to be annoyed. John Shuckle has a right to be annoyed. So has John Mahon. I mean, Jack Cooney. Japers. I mean, these guys, it's a total insult to them that nobody's even recognising them and putting them on a TV. They've sold to the highest bidder, Mayo or whatever it is, and Tyrone, and good luck to the rest.
But then is that not proving the point of actually there are benefits to a Tier 2 because already these counties aren't getting any attention? So at least this side, even if there isn't huge attention on a second tier, there is silverware at the end of it. There's competitive games. There is like the league in Division 3 and Division 4. You say that's so competitive. You get teams at your own level.
This is like Groundhog Day. We have the National Football League. We're playing these teams every year. So you want to repeat that now in the summer with another competition, a tiered competition where you're going back to play the same teams. I don't see the logic of it. To me, the logic is, as in most sports around the world, the league is the most important competition. The championship knockout competition is a secondary competition. We have it reversed. And I think the very simple solution is to bring the league into the summer and look at reforming the league if you want to. As a point I made earlier was about the small divisions that one decision can make a huge impact. Maybe expand the size of the divisions slightly and have maybe 3 divisions, and you'd have a far, far stronger league. You'd have more games within your league system, and your championship is maybe revert to a knockout competition. I take the case of Pádraig Hammond, Carlow, played for
Newport.
He's made sensational headlines all year. Where did he make it? In the FA Cup, knockout competition, Manchester City and so on. He didn't make with Newport County in League Two, so he didn't. So it was the big day, performing for Newport in the FA Cup, where he made his name, and it's the same in the championship. It's knockouts, the glory, it's on the day. It should be the same with us, I think, and our league is for consistency, it's for developing, it's for building teams. The league is the most important competition. The league is fantastic for us, except we're playing it in muck and dirt and cold and wet and rain, and we're trying to attract people to it. If we play that a bit later in the year, imagine the attendances at a Friday night league game. It'd be transformed. Absolutely transformed.
Liam, from your point of view then, because Tipperary would probably be a good example of this, do you think if, say, for the last decade it had been a 2-tier championship, that Tipperary with the momentum would have built their way up and would have eventually proved to be the best of the rest and then kicked on and reached an All-Ireland semi-final?
No, I don't think so, no. I think a
Division 3 team, interested?
No, I think a Division 3 team getting to an All-Ireland semi-final won't happen again if they make it a 2-tier competition, because you're not going to improve playing teams of the same ability as yourself. I mean, I was with Limerick 15 years before this, and we took on Kerry on equal terms. And the point is, that's what you aspire to do. And they started, Limerick were 33 out of 34 in the country, and Tipperary were down somewhere, in the high 30s as well. But the point is, they ended up taking on Kerry that's the reality. In a Munster, in a Division 1 semi-final and a Munster final, and drew with them in a Munster final in the year that they won both competitions with nobody coming within 10 points of them. And the same with Tipperary. Tipperary were in a couple of kicks of the ball of an All-Ireland final against Dublin, ironically. But you're not going to do that by splitting the competitions in 2. And at the same time, then you'd say, okay, for every one Tipperary team who got to an All-Ireland semi-final, I think Wexford were the only ones that did that previously, which was years and years ago. And you're saying that doesn't justify having lopsided games. But at the same time, every player aspires to be the best they can be, and every player wants to take on. I would say Carlow got as much out of beating Kildare in the championship as they would out of winning maybe 3 games against teams of Division 4 standard or Division 3 standard. And that's you're cutting that out. You're saying that's not going to happen if you do this.
I think there's sufficient examples of lower ranked teams doing well in the championship in the last few years to justify leaving them in the championship. Tipperary have come from Division 4. You have Fermanagh. You have had Laois been a really, really good example of it for a long time now. Laois are a small county and have competed very well, got to a couple of Leinster finals, done very well through the qualifiers. There's plenty examples like that. Look at Monaghan.
Westmeath, yeah.
These are counties like ourselves that we would traditionally have played quite often in Division 4 football.
Fermanagh.
And who are now playing, competing in Leinster finals and Ulster finals. It can be done.
Well, it is cyclical. There's no doubt about it. It is cyclical.
And it's always going to be cyclical.
You're going to have a bunch of players that are going to come through, and they're going to be the stars for 6 or 7 years, and then they're going to drop off again if you don't have a conveyor belt coming through. But my biggest fear is that if you have a second tier, I'm in favour of a second tier, but if you have it, I don't think you're going to get the support. I don't know where it's going to come from. Yeah. I don't think it's going to get the status. I think it'll always be the bridesmaid to anything that's going on.
Yeah, I agree totally with that. Both guys have alluded to this, and I would agree totally. There's no point in doing this if they don't do it properly. If they are going to do it and they're going to drive in it through, they must do it properly. If they don't do it properly, then it's a waste of time. Because again, the McDonagh Cup is on this weekend, and the final is on, and nobody knows anything about it. Or in fairness, it'll be the 2 counties may have some support there, but nobody else knows anything about it, and it's all done and dusted, and get them out of the way as quickly as possible. While there's a Munster and that's another argument. There's so many top games on at the same weekend. Imagine a Munster and a Leinster hurling final on the same day. it's ridiculous. There was 3 provincial finals on last weekend. To me, there's an awful lot of problems, and 2-tier isn't the top of the priority list for me anyway.
Yeah, I wonder about the attention side of things and the media interest, because actually I was surprised. We had a panel about a month ago with 3 hurlers who were playing in the Larry Maher, the Nicky Rackard and the Christy Ring, and actually they liked that setup. I expected, now they don't know any different, I guess is the thing. They haven't had the opportunity in the sun to play Kilkenny, to play Cork. They've always been at that sort of level generally, and they like the fact that every week they know they're not going to go out and get beaten by 30 points, that they're going to play teams on a level, and then they get their one day possibly at Croke Park. Now I think that was their biggest issue, that at times the games get brought out at Croke Park, but that generally they should, like they got last week, their day at Croke Park.
This is a very important point, I think, because the comparison is being made between those and doing this in the football. There's a massive difference. Football is across the 31 counties. We leave out Kilkenny for this point of this argument. It's a very strong club structures in every county in the country. Every county can compete at a fairly decent level. So in football terms, it's not the same in hurling. You're talking about counties here who were trying to promote hurling. I mean, they didn't even feel it inter-county level, 10 years ago, and they have maybe 1 or 2 hurling clubs in some of these counties, and that's what you're comparing it with.
I think Leitrim have 2 or 3 only.
So it's completely different. Football is much healthier and stronger all across the country.
All I noticed was the Carlow manager having a dig at Kilkenny while he got the chance. Any opportunity. We're getting a lot of texts in on this. Ulster and Connacht will be punished by a tiered championship. Merge Munster and Leinster and tier them. Many counties with big populations simply haven't done enough by comparison to the likes of Cavan and Roscommon. Need to be taken to task for that.
That's a fair point.
That actually a lot of counties haven't done what, say, Tipperary did and put in place, and Carlow.
You can throw Monaghan into that as well.
Yeah, Munster football's crap. Kerry have won 13 of the last 15 championships. 8 groups of 4, top 2 in each through to Sam Maguire last 16. Losers in that round into the quarter-final of a Paulie O'Shea Cup. Bottom 2 in group into last 16 of a Kevin Heffernan Cup. Losers of that going to the last 8 of the Eamon Coleman Cup. A lot of cups suddenly coming into this. Left, right and centre. Every team gets 5 matches, 4 tiers, and all teams have a chance of winning tier 1.
Well,
would you have an issue with every team at the start of the year having an opportunity to win Sam Maguire as it is now, but as the championship rolls on, you would drop into a tier 2? Would the 4 of you like to be sitting here now, having lost in the first round of the qualifiers, with another opportunity to go out into a tier 2 system? Would that motivate you? Would it motivate your players?
I would be happy enough with that if it didn't start in the provincial championship, because what people are saying there on the text is that, okay, so Munster's non-competitive, Leinster's non-competitive, and the other 2 provinces are competitive in fairness. So what if we take the provincial championships away completely, and you put in a tier 1 team, a tier 2 team, a 3 tier team, and a team tier 4 team into a group, and you go, and they're all seeded obviously, and you go and you play. So you have the opportunity to play teams at your own level. You have an opportunity to play a team slightly above your level, and maybe really try and punch against one of the big boys. So you're getting a little bit of everything. Then when that competition flows and you have your top 2 in each group goes into the Sam Maguire, the team that had the chance to get into the top 2 in that group, they have, if they finish 3rd or 4th, they go into their secondary competition. But the real issue, I think, is the way the provincial championship works, and that the geography of it determines of who you're going to be playing rather than your ability. So take that away, then we know that's not going to happen, because it's not one of the proposals, and because the individual provincial councils won't let it happen. But that would, for me, be the way to go, and you're getting a bit of everything. You're getting the opportunity to play against one of the big boys and improve. You get an opportunity to play against a team on your own level, and let's see where you progress from there.
And also, if you brought something like that in, you actually would have an inter-county season and a club season, and you could define them.
Because you could start out everybody is the exact same.
Whereas at the moment, you can't do that, and the club players are suffering completely as a result of it. To be honest, the whole thing needs to be looked at as an overall, and not this bitty, piecemeal thing. And as I said already, the 2-tier championship isn't. There's a lot more issues to be dealt with before that.
I think I made a reference during the week about GA competitions being like a camel, designed by a committee.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
If you look at the championship, we have a knockout, we have qualifiers, and then we have a league system in one competition. We're talking about this tier championship, and we're talking about designing a competition where we don't know who's going to be that top 2 teams that's going to come back into the championship. So it's always ifs and buts. We had the hurling where Carlow are relegated. Waterford aren't in the hurling championship. So we designed these competitions, and there's never a clear path of progression. And this is one of the really difficult things with GAA, that we seem to complicate competitions instead of keeping them simple. Leagues are for development and for growth and for a path. The best team that wins the league at the end on a season. Championship is probably a knockout competition where on the day you might take out the big team and they are gone, and then it opens up for everybody. That's how I see it.
Look, again, without going back to it, I still think that the biggest thing you can do for footballers to improve, and hurlers for that matter, is that when the fields are green at this time of the year, when the grass is mown, when the sun is high in the sky, that's the time to be playing football, not in the muck and gutter. For God's sake, get away from it, and take into context the club football as well. And just not all about county football. The way you'll develop it is, if I'm going back and if I'm going to stay on with Wicklow, what I need to do is see good players playing on fast ground in good football, and that's how you'll develop them. Not sitting at home where the Wicklow players are at the moment, and indeed the Louth players, the Carlow players and the Tipperary players.
We kind of operate in a bit of a bubble in the inter-county scene, and it's interesting that when a lot of the top players retire from inter-county and go back to play club football, the comments they make afterwards are about how difficult it is for club players with a fragmented season, don't know when they're playing, can't plan holidays, can do nothing. And you know, we have to plan weddings. We have to hold thing right.
Everybody's selfish. And I remember having Tomás O'Shea on the show about 3 years ago. I think Nemo just won the championship, and he spent 20 minutes saying, like, he never noticed. And let's be honest, most of them don't care because they don't have time. They have inter-counties, practically professionals. We hear they have to put their full focus. But
we've all managed at club level as well, so we know it from both sides. And the club scene is impossible to deal with.
We need to go back to a pre-2000 traditional straight knockout championship. Backdoor systems encourage more professionalism because bigger counties know they'll still be involved come August.
Very fair point.
Would you like a straight knockout?
I'd love it. I'd love it.
Why?
Why? Because
what if you get Dublin in the first round?
Well, if someone could take Dublin out in the first round, they're gone. They're not coming back. Like a stake through your heart. You know.
I get the feeling you don't like Dublin.
I love Dublin. I love Dublin. But that's the only way they're going to take it out.
We'll get on to Dublin in a moment. My favourite text is from Paul in Arklow. Introduce a handicap scoring system based on rankings for the football championship. Give the weaker counties a 6 or 8 point head start.
Oh, they are good on you, Paul.
We'll take that. I would love that.
More defensive football then.
Talk to Paddy Power about it, and he'll give you the answer.
How many points head start do you want? A 20 point head start against the Dubs?
Well, I think what I said to the Dublin lads is that we know they're going to beat us by more than 20 points, anything from 20 to 25 points last year. And do you know something? We went out and enjoyed ourselves, and we scored the most against Dublin up to a certain point last year. You can get a lot out of taking on the best. There is no doubt about that. And certainly with Roscommon, I remember taking on Tyrone, Mayo at the time, Monaghan, and you know, it improved us. So playing better teams, I've no doubt about it.
It's the only way to improve.
Absolutely. We played Dublin in the championship, and I think it was 17-9 was the score. You know, that was a fantastic day for Carlow. We were very, very difficult to play against that day, you know, and you know, the likes of maybe St. Joseph Dungiven there, the patron saint of cynics, wasn't happy with the side of football. But really and truly, you know, we put up a performance that day that nobody else did, I think, against Dublin that year, like, and they never scored a goal against us.
That's right.
It was touch and go really the time Dermot Connolly got the line that time, and that was a fantastic game of football, and Carlow were part of that, you know, and they're the days you want.
If you can stick with us, I might just take a very quick break because I do want to talk about Dublin. As you say, they're almost a tier onto themselves at this stage, and just want to talk about a lot of the conversations that have been going on around Dublin. We are talking with 4 inter-county managers: Turlough O'Brien, Wayne Kierans, John Evans and Liam Kearns. With us 53106 if you've got any thoughts on our Saturday panel.
The Saturday panel on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Avantcard, powered by MasterCard.
Alive and Kicking with Claire McKenna.
On Alive and Kicking this week, Goop, the Gwyneth Paltrow site and podcast, has become a massive health and wellness juggernaut. I speak to its Chief Content Officer, Elise Loonan. How long should you brush your teeth for, and do you really have to floss? I get into the dentist's chair. And I meet the billionaire who's turned his back on the corporate world for happiness.
Alive and Kicking,
Thanks to Repromed.
With me, Claire McKenna, this Sunday from 9 a.m.
On News Talk.
Relaxing afternoons with Harvey Norman. Transform your weekend lie-in with a brand new bed. Visit Harvey Norman today and rest easy. You're in safe hands with our sleep specialists.
Go, Harvey, go!
The wait is over. A new age in walk-in medical care has arrived in Ireland, where long waiting times in busy waiting rooms are a thing of the past, where patients suffering from minor injuries and illnesses are seen within an hour by the very best medical practitioners delivering quality care in a modern stress-free environment. Express Care walk-in clinics in Cork, Tallaght and Santry are open to everyone and open 365 days a year. For more information, go to expresscare.eu. Express Care by Affidea. Be seen as a priority.
Start your story at Woodies. Brighten up your summer with amazing deals. Dulux Weather Shield 10 litre colours, 2 for €120. 6-pack summer bedding, 2 for €5. And garden furniture and barbecues, up to an incredible 50% off. Woodies. We're all homemakers. T's and C's and exclusions apply.
Life feels better when you know your loved ones are being looked after. Well, now you can protect your family's future for just €10.10 per month with Leia Life Insurance. Simply answer a few short questions. There's no medical required. And unlike any other insurer, you're covered by Leia Life instantly, which means your family will get a lump sum payment should you pass away. Join us online and you'll get a 10% discount and a further 10% if you're already a Leia Healthcare member. Visit leialife.ie or call us now on 1890 907 100.
Insurance provided by iptiQ Life SA. Leia Healthcare Limited, trading as Leia Life and Leia Healthcare, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
There are a lot of solicitors out there offering legal services, and it's hard to know who to choose. The National Solicitors Alliance has been established to make it easy to find a trusted legal service.
The Alliance includes 50 approved firms across the country, working locally and sharing expertise nationally. Find your nearest National Solicitors Alliance member at nsalliance.ie.
In a world where they said it couldn't be done, the impossible has been achieved. They've taken the perfect chicken breast sandwich and made it even perfecter. More perfect. Really, really better. How did they do this?
Could I have bacon and cheese on that, please?
That's right. A little extra sizzle is now in store. Supermac's new chicken breast sandwich. The best just got better with bacon and cheddar.
This weekend's gonna be a scorcher, and at Centra we have great offers. Like Centra Irish sirloin steak, perfect for the barbecue, half price. Selected fruit and veg like cherry tomatoes, any 3 for €2. And Budweiser and Carlsberg 8-pack cans, only €10. Centra. Live every day. Enjoy cold sensibly.
What to eat, who to love, where to go. We get so many answers online. But the answers to some questions can only be found on the open road. For instance, just how good is it to drive an award-winning SUV like the Peugeot 2008, 3008 or 5008? Find out during the Peugeot Drive Time event now on at your nearest Peugeot dealer. Ask about flexible payment options and our 5-year warranty. Never have SUVs gone so far. See Peugeot.ie for terms and conditions.
The greatest change often comes from the smallest actions, like flicking on the TV or plugging in your charger. Switch to SSE Airtricity and switch to 100% green electricity. So every time you switch on or plug in, you're helping create a greener future. You'll also get €150 welcome credit plus 10% off your electricity. Go to sseairtricity.com today. This is a great deal. This is Generation Green. Estimated annual bill €1,030.47. Offer from 23rd of April 2019. Rates valid from 3rd of December 2018, subject to change. 1 year standard unit rate discount for new home electricity customers on direct debit and e-bill. For details and terms and conditions, rates, EAB, exit fees, standing charges, see sseairtricity.com.
Switch at Carphone Warehouse today for sensational deals you won't find anywhere else. Like the brand new Huawei P30 Lite for free. Yes, free, with free earbuds. Or get the seriously innovative iPhone 7 for only €99. Both available on a €30 a month plan with 3. The only network with all-you-can-eat data. But hurry, it's only available when you switch at Carphone Warehouse, the home of the networks. Any network, any phone, any plan. Only Carphone Warehouse. T's and C's apply. Offer subject to 24-month contract.
Off the ball. This is News Talk.
Welcome back to our Saturday panel. Lots of texts coming in. We will get to those over the next little while. We do have 4 inter-county managers who are all involved in the championship in studio with us. We have Turlough O'Brien, the Carlow manager, Wayne Kierans, the Louth manager, John Evans, the Wicklow manager, and Liam Kearns, the former Tipperary manager, are with us. So, we barely mentioned Dublin, a tier all to themselves. 14 of the last 15 Leinster titles, a 16-point win over Meath last weekend. They're on course and odds-on favourites to win an unprecedented 5th All-Ireland in a row. And a lot of questions over the last week about, well, as I think it was Kevin McMenamin said, this was cyclical, or whether this is here to stay and we're going to see Dublin winning 6, 7, 8 All-Irelands every decade over the next 50 years. You look at the bare statistics, Dublin at the moment have 40% of all the people in the population. There's expected to be an increase in the population of 750,000 over the next couple of decades, with 75% of that in and around the Dublin area. You look at the funding, which I think has been well publicised, 18 million in games development funding from 2007 to 2018. Cork, the next highest, on 1.4 million. Do any of you think Dublin have an unfair advantage?
The more than one.
80 million of them.
Well, the first thing you say is that they have a good team. Absolutely. They are good footballers, and by God are they carrying their colours in the right manner. For full marks there. Absolutely.
I think everyone can put that out there, because it does come across that there is this bad mouthing of this current team. Nobody can say that this isn't possibly the greatest team with some of the greatest players and a lot of very good men involved in this current team.
They're not just a good team, but they're the way they carry themselves, their character.
Absolutely.
They're brilliant people. They're brilliant people. They're so committed to it. Dublin GA people traditionally have been really, really great GA people, and we often talk about the GA being a rural organisation, but Dublin GA people are so committed to the association. It's incredible, and it's great to see them reaping the rewards of their efforts. They are a superb team, but there are other issues too.
Absolutely. I'd be in awe watching them over the last number of years of what they've produced in terms of their players, their athleticism, their management team. Everything about them is first class. So the real question is not to knock Dublin. It's the question is, how does everybody else improve? So that brings back the financial question. So, is there an unfair advantage in terms of why is one county getting more resources allocated to them than the other? So it's not about the Dublin football players or the Dublin management team, it's the structure overall. How can we improve the other teams? And it's the same going to the playing structures. The message, the outcome goal has to be, how do we get our teams to improve? And I think people lose sight in that. And that's the main question really. So financially, is there a situation that can be created that's going to help everybody else? And there has to be.
I know you say not to knock Dublin, but is it going to be possible to bring teams up to their level without knocking Dublin back, without withdrawing a substantial part of the funding and reallocating it? Because you look at the sponsorship deals that are in place, they're only going to increase because sponsors want to be associated with the successful brand, but also the population and the amount of members at Dublin clubs that the likes of AIG and Vodafone now have access to, that unless you pool resources or take right back in the development funding, you have to sort of force Dublin into coming closer to the pack, because are you going to be able to bring the pack closer to them?
Bring it back to grassroots first, Nathan. 9 years ago, I came up here to Dublin to do a coaching seminar. I was absolutely shocked to see that every single club had a GDA. I was below in Tipperary, and we had three of them were for hurling and one for football. And I mean, the proportionality of the professionalism that they had back then was producing it. And the reason I'm trying to say this is that Tipperary, we got in a few guys into Tipperary, and we didn't meet the Costellos, the Mannions, the Jack McCaffreys, the Smalls in a minor final. But now I look at Dublin, and it has grown immensely that they now have 2 GDAs to each club. They have the number of
54 games promotion officers, 3 regional development officers, a hurling development officer, and a football development officer.
That's astounding. Don't be blaming the Dublin football team for this. This is the structures they've set up, but they have the money to do it. And I think if John Horn or if John Costello comes on and they want to throw a bucket of water over the fuel that they're not financially advanced, I think it's inflaming it. I think they're throwing petrol on it by denying it,
Let's hear from Jim Gavin, actually. So he was talking after the Leinster final victory against Meath last weekend. He was talking to our own Maura Trass and Nick Callig about the unseen work that goes on behind the scenes with Dublin.
I know you're not a man who'll take praise, and I know you always say you bat it off and you say it's the players and they're wonderful. And this Dublin team, they are wonderful. They've achieved great things, and you're probably hoping they'll achieve even more. But you must be quite tired now of just people throwing the stones and, saying, oh, it's all money got you here. It's more than money, I'd imagine.
Well, I was up with the under 11s now, got the grown up. Under 11s yesterday, with the last game of the season before the summer. My son plays with Ballyboe and St Enda's, and we're playing Coola, and we had 4 coaches. Tony was leading us out in the sideline, and Coola had another 4 on the sideline, and don't think any of us were getting paid, that's for sure. We're all there to see our kids. Beautiful summer days with what your memories are made of. Cracking game of football, drawing the end, and we're just fortunate in Dublin that we have some really smart people with their hands on the tiller who are, who have applied to Croke Park, got funding. We're in a fantastic stadium, and Croke Park is led by some remarkable people. They have the mortgage paid off in Croke Park. So, if I was in the county, I'd be knocking on their door with a smart business plan to say, we want to use, well, a similar model that Dublin have. The clubs fund up 50% of funding for the coaches. Croke Park do help, but other monies are bridged by the sponsorship we get, which is, we've got a good team there in the county board, and by gate receipts, and that's. But on the boots on the ground, the teachers who were with these men when they were 10 in Croke Park or in the coming Munster games, the mums and dads, it's probably a bit of an insult to say that that the funding that they obviously didn't get, but that the coaches get in the clubs is what's met them, and what's met them is bloody hard work, and mums and dads and guardians that care for the guys, and so I could just see that the pride that guys have representing their county, and long may that continue.
That's Jim Gavin talking after the Leinster final last week. I know a lot of people were annoyed about the way he talked about volunteers, as if Dublin have some sort of a monopoly in volunteerism. I don't think that's what he meant, but is the point there that actually the importance of volunteers, it's the organisation around the volunteers in Dublin, that every club, every county has parents of under 8s, under 9s, under 10s who will get involved in their local club. The difference in Dublin is that they have these 54 games promotions officers, that they're influenced, that the coaches that are going in, the parents, they're learning the right things to pass it on, and there's this cycle of excellence because of the amount of people that they're able to employ.
I think every county has its fair share of volunteers and coaches, and they're no different than Dublin in that regard. Certainly the impact of the GDAs would be very important in the development of the game. It's not an impact on the current Dublin team, I would say, but on the overall growth of the game in Dublin, it is. And, really, if you look at something like a professional sport like the NFL in America, where you have positive discrimination in the draft, where the weakest team gets to pick up the best player in the draft, we need some kind of positive discrimination in the GA towards the lower ranked teams, that they will get some positive discrimination somewhere along the line.
In terms of funding?
Probably in funding, yeah, absolutely. There's some imaginative way of looking at it, but it's very unusual, for the strongest to get the most support when it's not needed.
Well, as well as that, look, you have to look at it. Where the most population is, they're saying per capita, it's proportionality and it is fair. Hold on a minute. Down in Kerry or Cork or over in Clare, there's less population, so they have to put their hands into their pockets a lot deeper to support their team. In fact, it is less money they should be getting because they have bars, they have pitches, they have the numbers here. So to me, it doesn't make sense, because
so that's on Dublin saying that actually the clubs pay for 50% of the wages.
Exactly.
Of the development officers.
I mean, you go down to Dr. Crokes and the Gooch is there, Pat O'Shea is there, Johnny Buckley is there. You go over to Lone Rangers and Peter Crowley is there. You go to Stacks and Donaghy is there. So there's volunteerism all over the place. However, we're not getting the financial end of it, and don't anybody cod yourself.
What Jim Gavin said there about getting in front of Croke Park with a smart business plan, does he have a point there where a lot of county boards actually, if you were to throw money at them, are a lot of county boards in a position to use that money in the right way?
Well, I was invited onto a committee some years ago by Para Duffy. He brought together representatives of 8 or 9 of the weaker counties with a view to coming up with proposals to support us in promoting football, as they had done with the hurling. we met 3 or 4 times, and a lot of reasonable proposals put together, but nothing happened. That was the end of it. Nothing happened.
There was no final meeting where they were implementing the proposals?
There was no funding provided. Nothing has happened. That was 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, I think this conversation as regards Dublin, it's too soon for me anyway. There's other counties such as Kerry and others have done 4 in a row. There's Kilkenny and Hurling have done 4 in a row. They're going for 5 in a row. I think, as you said, if they're getting to 6 and 7 in a row, then you need to be. We're going into uncharted.
Only 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, I know that. We're going into uncharted territory now.
Cards as well.
If they actually manage it this year, I'll put it this way: if they get beaten this year, will the same amount of interest be in talking about Dublin and what they're doing or how they're
it should be, because they're probably going to win it next year if they don't win it this year.
Yeah, I think they may go, and that may be the case. And if in another 3 years' time we're looking at them with 7 and 8 All-Irelands in a row, then you're gone into uncharted territory, and you're going to have to look at whether they like it or not.
Because the way the cycle goes, that if you are investing, it's probably going to take 10-15 years to see the fruits of that.
But whether they have the success or not, they're getting the funding, and the disparity is just too big at the moment. You know, when it was decided that Dublin should be funded back in 2002, it was the right decision. And in fairness, Dublin County Board have used the money really, really well, and they have developed their clubs, and they have developed a coaching structure in Dublin that are second to none. And then John Costello have the best administrator in the country. But its success has been achieved. What about the other, areas in the country that have black spots? The other cities would have it. We have issues in rural Ireland with the population and trying to field teams and all sorts of things, that need to be addressed by the GEA as well.
And I guess there is practical help, because when they talk about putting together smart business plans, you look at the biggest clubs around Dublin. I just mentioned, if you go from sort of the C to the M50, from Coola to Kilmacud to Ballyboden to St Jude's, the sheer population number there, and the amount of people involved in the club, and the amount of solicitors and architects and very professional people, they've any amount of them who can all come together and apply for grants, and they have the know-how and intelligence and know-how. Whereas actually, as you say, because of the rural depopulation, the sheer numbers there mean you're at a huge disadvantage, and that's actually something the GEA can help. But again, money.
Let's give a bit of credit to the chasers. There's other teams out there besides Dublin. There's Donegal, there's Galway, there's Kerry, there's Cork, there's Armagh, there's a few chasers there. When I can always.
Dublin beat Armagh by 15 points.
We'll see. But when Kilkenny were going for the 5 in a row, nobody thought they could come near them except Liam Sheedy. And he put belief into a team. I think I'm inclined to agree with Liam a small bit here. Let's wait and see what happens. I know you, Nathan, you're saying that it's too late, but look, it's not done yet. It's not a done deal, and I think if there's a redistribution of funds, it could go a long way towards it. And there's a lot of country people in those Dublin clubs, let me tell you, from Mayo and Galway and Kerry and Donegal.
I think a redistribution of funds could happen now. I think that you're probably right. That should be happening now. Almost straight away.
Well, Tom Ryan said in the RTE piece that was aired last week that they're looking at that, and he doesn't think it will continue at the sort of rate that it's been at for the last 10 years.
But Nathan, it's like throwing apples into an orchard. The orchard is already full. What are you doing? There's clubs down in Kerry who are trying to bring fellas down from Cork and Dublin to play games for them, and they don't have the funding for it.
Just on that, Wayne, then what John touched on there, that clubs around Dublin are full of country people, basically. But is that not part of the problem here, that as to how you overturn this? The demographics of the country are that more and more of the population are moving to Dublin and staying in Dublin. It's not like 30 years ago where you might go to college in Dublin and then move back home to the country. People are staying here, and that's only going to continue to increase.
Yeah, it's going to be very difficult to change the demographic of the country and the natural flow towards the big city. But I think in terms of the redistribution of the funding, I think we all our own counties have to look at ourselves and think, look, if we get an increased budget over the next couple of years, are we going to spend it in the proper way? And that's a big thing that we can do ourselves, regardless of what Dublin do with it, or regardless of the template that they've used. We have to make sure that we use it well in terms of, is it for developing facilities, is it for developing coaches?
But you have to make the choice is the problem, I guess, because I think most people would say if money is going in, it should go to underage development and building up like they did in Tipperary under 14, under 15. But right now, Dublin have a backroom team of 23 people.
Well, that's it.
That's not winning the game for them.
Would have.
The big thing I see it, and let's talk about the elephant in the room, Nathan, is that I know of clubs that in Dublin that are looking to get the best players out of Roscommon, out of Galway, out of Kerry, out of Cork, and they want them in Dublin. Wayne, because what? They can afford to put them up in an apartment. They can afford to give them expenses for this, that, and the other, and nobody can match that.
But there's very few players, even still. When you look at
this is in club football.
But when you look at the amount of young men who are working in Dublin, there's still very few of the county players playing their club football in Dublin. Like, most of them are still making that sacrifice to travel down and play.
Absolutely, it's probably less now than it was 10 years ago. There were quite a lot of players attached to Dublin clubs there for a while. It seems to have calmed down a bit now, but the reality is, look, funding for us is so difficult. I mean, we've no GPS systems in Carlow. We did training weekend.
Carlow, 1 games manager, 3 games development administrators.
They're doing very well. We've actually a very good coaching underage structure going on there at the moment. But in terms of looking after the county team, we just don't have the money, the resources to look after our team as well as other counties. We wanted a training weekend, we couldn't afford it. We went to St Sylvester's for the day. The hurlers went to Tramore. They're the realities of it. We're not going to France to look at World War I graves, and it's a different level. It's an absolutely different level, and we'll always struggle. And that's the fear too with a tiered championship. If you're playing an extended season through a tier 2 competition nobody wants, you've extended your cost base as well, and it puts more pressure on the county boards. So I don't know if it's going to be attractive financially for county boards.
I don't know, I'm just looking here at Wicklow. 1 games manager, 6 games development administrators, 1 coaching officer, 1 hurling officer, 1 children's officer. Questions about the senior manager with that sort of resources?
Yeah, well, the senior manager has 3 of a background, and 2 of those selectors are coaches as well.
As well, yeah.
Leighton Glynn is the coach with it. Brian Heaslip. And we have 1 S&C. That's it. And let me tell you that we did an under 20 team where we had the 1 masseur and physio and the whole lot. He did the whole lot in 1. Shane Farrer, and did a good job. So you deal with the cloth you're dealt with, or you make the suit with the cloth you're dealt with, and we'd love to be in Dublin, but we're not.
Yeah, you've all been very good with your time. I'll just run through a couple of texts to finish up. Adrian O'Sullivan, who's at Coach Sully on Twitter, coach with the Westmeath Senior Hurlers, says, I don't agree with John and Turlough. Look at Nevena in Wexford last year, were junior a few years back. Not being in the top tier is not a barrier to achievement. It means winning the lower grades are targets on the road to success.
Very good point.
Declan Cusack, is club just different to county, you think? Because obviously every county will have their junior, intermediate, senior.
I think it is different. I think every football county aspires to play at the highest level.
If funding was the answer, how come Dublin don't have the same underage success?
They're pretty good now. They're pretty good, and they get good people over them. And
the development train really only starts when they leave minor, and they go and they bridge the gap, and they can bring them in, and they're in, basically, if they're in good enough, they're in the system, and they're bridged all the way from 18 all the way up into the senior team. So that's an element of funding that we wouldn't have, for instance, to bridge the gap from our very good minors into our senior team, because we lose them, and we possibly might lose them to different sports even. So when Dublin get hold of the good players, they can afford to keep them.
And I don't know, is there a tie-in really between minor? It never was in Kerry anyway, between minor and senior. It's such a big gap now.
It's even bigger now.
Yeah.
And if you talk about population, Kildare and Cork are 2 counties that are hugely growing in population-wise. So they're 2 counties that certainly, from a population point of view, should be able to compete. And in any county, you can only put out 30 players, 35 players. That's the bottom line. All right, you have a better chance if the population is bigger of having those quality players. But in my view, any county could. We've mentioned Roscommon, Monaghan and others who are overachieving for the size of their county, but they're making the most of their resources and they're helping themselves.
Not looking after the clubs is most evident in a county like Cork, where their county team's suffering terribly because they've no meaningful club football games outside of championship. A team could be out of the championship and done for the year in July, when everyone should be playing football. A better club scene develops better county teams and improves the whole inter-county scenario. They're trying to fix the problem in reverse by starting with overhauling the inter-county fixtures. As a text from Paul in Cork.
100%. Good point.
This is utter madness. Let's go back to the quality and fitness of the 80s. What competition in the world has 32 teams at an even level?
It's true.
It's true, yeah.
Yeah, accept that.
There's very few competitions that has, one that's so far away above the other 31.
All right, lads, I think we're going to have to leave it at that. You've given up most of your day to come in. Thanks very much. We've had a big response to it. Congratulations as well to Robert Carty from Enniscorthy. You've won 2 tickets to tomorrow's Leinster hurling finals. You correctly told us that 2014 was the last time Kilkenny were crowned Electric Ireland All-Ireland Minor Hurling Champions. That with thanks to Electric Ireland. We're going to be talking football next, but my thanks to our Saturday panel who've been here for the last hour and a half or so. Really good chat. It'll all be up on offtheball.com very shortly. To John Evans, the Wicklow manager.
You're welcome,
still,
Nathan.
and hopefully next year as well. Keep you on the road.
Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you very much for coming in. Turlough O'Brien, as always, thanks a lot for coming in.
Thanks, Ian.
Very best of luck, Liam.
Cheers, Ian.
Where are you going next? Give us the exclusive.
I'm open to offers now.
Monaghan is the word on the street.
Yeah, well,
here's your chance to speak live to the people of Monaghan.
Well, I have no comment to make on that.
And also to Wayne.
The roads are good. The roads are good up that.
Yeah. It's a good trek. It's similar to Wicklow, is it? Worth your while.
Well, the backstop is what he'd be worried about.
All right, lads, we'll take a quick break.
Okay, great stuff. Okay.
Join the conversation. Text us on 53106. Texts cost 30 cents.
Painting or decorating? Well, your local Crown Decorating Centre has everything you need. They're all there. Crown, Santex, Sadolin, plus a huge range of painting accessories right on your doorstep. We're primed and ready with expert advice, and we're super friendly. We even have a free colour matching service with over 30,000